There is a way of speaking to a man that quietly disarms him, stirs something ancient inside his chest, and awakens a desire he cannot rationally explain. A desire that makes him see you not just as another woman, but as someone unforgettable, irreplaceable, and deeply significant. It isn't born from manipulation, pressure, or trying too hard, but from understanding the invisible architecture of the male psyche, much like Carl Jung explored in his teachings, where the subconscious holds more power than the conscious mind could ever comprehend. Most women don't realize this, yet it's not beauty or flawless words that make a man fall deeply in love, but the emotion you awaken within him and the unseen pull he feels toward you. Jung explained that a man's inner world is shaped by forces below the surface, and when you learn to speak in a way that activates these hidden mechanisms, you become the woman he cannot overlook, no matter how crowded his world is. Imagine this: a man who barely noticed you suddenly begins paying attention to everything about you, your tone, your stillness, your pauses, your silences, and finds himself drawn to you without understanding why. You don't chase, convince, plead, or perform. Instead, he feels compelled to move closer, to earn your regard, and to win space in your life. This is the secret women who enchant men naturally embody. They understand the psychology of communication, the emotional rhythm beneath words, and the magnetic force hidden in restraint. Jung believed the unconscious is activated through symbols, patterns, and archetypes, and the most powerful one in a man is the hero instinct, the drive to pursue, conquer, win, and protect. When a woman gives everything too quickly, without allowing him that journey, something inside him disengages because no challenge exists for his spirit to grasp. Yet when you speak in a way that blends gentle vulnerability with subtle mystery, you awaken a fascination he cannot shake because you trigger the part of him that longs to explore, understand, and unravel what he does not fully grasp. Most women mistakenly overshare to create closeness, yet what awakens desire is offering just enough for him to feel something powerful, while still leaving space for him to wonder, imagine, and lean in. The unpredictability of a confident woman, the emotional challenge of her presence, the depth of her inner world, these elements ignite a psychological pursuit he feels compelled to follow. And it is not about games or manipulation, but about authenticity, emotional independence, and the powerful energy of a woman who knows her worth. Your tone, pauses, and expression become the language that communicates your essence more than the words themselves. When your voice carries softness, quiet confidence, and warmth with a hint of mystery, you activate the unconscious forces that bond him to you emotionally. He begins to feel as if there is always more to discover, something he has sensed but not yet reached. That is what provokes obsession. That is what awakens deep desire. Jung wrote that we fall in love with symbols of what we seek within ourselves. And when a woman embodies this deeper feminine energy, a man feels he has encountered something rare. He might not articulate it, but emotionally he knows it. And when you learn to speak with intention, presence, and restraint, you gently guide him into a connection he cannot abandon. Because ultimately, men do not fall for perfection, they fall for the feeling they experience in your presence, the emotional journey you offer, and the mystery you allow to exist. You don't give a man the sense that he is needed. You give him the sense that he desires you, that he chooses you, that he wants to move toward you of his own will. And this subtle psychological difference changes everything in his perception. The tone you speak with, the rhythm you carry, the pauses you allow, the confidence you project without force, all shape how he experiences you on a subconscious level long before he intellectually understands why he's drawn in. Jung spoke often about the unconscious power of suggestion, how certain stimuli bypass rational thought and strike directly at the emotional core, activating deep responses without conscious awareness. When you learn to speak with both gentleness and self-assurance, blending softness with strength, calm with intensity, you influence a man in ways he cannot resist, because you're speaking to far more than just the surface of his mind. The most strategic part comes in how you use this style deliberately, especially in key moments when the emotional stakes are high. There are specific phrases, tones, and patterns of dialogue that awaken something deep within a man and make him feel compelled to stay close to you. These shifts are often subtle, but their psychological impact is profound, because men do not fall in love simply with what they see, but with what they feel rising in them when they are in your presence. Jung believed the human mind is led by unconscious patterns that shape emotion, attraction, and behavior more than logic ever could, meaning a man forms deep connection only when your presence becomes tied to intense, unforgettable feelings. Your voice then becomes a catalyst, your silence becomes a message, and your expression becomes a language he recognizes emotionally, before he understands it intellectually. The true secret rests in the balance between mystery and closeness, between presence and independence, between warmth and restraint, a psychological choreography that seizes his attention. Once you master this style of communicating, the entire dynamic transforms, because you stop being merely another person in his life and become instead an emotional force that stirs in a movement he cannot ignore. Men are naturally drawn to challenge, not in the sense of difficulty, but through curiosity, unpredictability, discovery, and emotional novelty. And when everything becomes predictable, their passion decays. That is why one of the strongest ways to keep a man fascinated is to weave emotional unpredictability into your communication, not by confusing him or withholding affection, but by maintaining an inner world that he must earn access to over time. Jung talked about the unconscious forming attachments, and that is exactly what happens when you communicate with depth, restraint, and authenticity. A single pause before replying, a glance full of meaning, a tone that blends confidence and softness, awakens emotional reactions in him he cannot consciously rationalize. Strategic vulnerability is also essential because true connection demands openness, but only when expressed without desperation or self-abandonment. Most women believe they must minimize emotion to appear strong, yet in reality, the deepest bonds form when vulnerability meets mystery. Communication then stops being literal and becomes symbolic, emotional, instinctive. You awaken not just desire, but admiration, longing, and emotional memory. Jung described how archetypes live within the male psyche, shaping what he finds irresistible. And one of the most powerful is the woman who inspires, challenges, fascinates, and touches him emotionally without ever trying to impress him. When you understand how to position yourself psychologically, he begins to feel he is pursuing something meaningful, something rare, something that elevates him. Men value what they strive for, not what is handed to them effortlessly. And when you allow him to earn your attention, admiration deepens into devotion. Emotional rhythm is crucial because predictable communication dulls attraction, while deliberate pacing, silence, warmth, and contrast ignite his subconscious. He begins thinking of you unintentionally, replaying moments he doesn't fully understand, feeling compelled to return to the emotional energy you create. What truly binds him is not perfection, but emotional intensity that lingers. And when you master this way of speaking, you no longer need to seek attention or force connection, because he gravitates toward you naturally, drawn by emotion rather than logic, by depth rather than appearance, by what he feels becoming within himself when he is around you. This means a man doesn't fall in love merely with a woman. He falls in love with the version of himself that awakens in her presence, the man he becomes when she is near, when he feels stronger, more capable, seen, valued, and admired beside her. His subconscious links those emotions directly to her energy, and from that, a powerful attachment is formed, one he can barely understand and rarely escape. This projection happens quietly in the tone of your voice, the softness of your gaze, the way you respond to his stories, and the gentle warmth you give without ever losing yourself. When you both challenge and appreciate him, when you mix admiration with unpredictability, you create an emotional tension that fascinates him. Sometimes, a single provocative question or a confident silence has far more impact than endless praise, because unpredictability awakens the desire to prove himself, to rise, to conquer. Jung called this dynamic the natural pull toward individuation, the human instinct to grow into the most complete version of oneself. Men are drawn to women who inspire evolution, who carry their own life, who live with depth and purpose beyond the relationship. When a man senses that you don't need him, but choose him consciously, your presence becomes meaningful instead of expected. The male psyche seeks purpose, challenge, and movement, not stagnation. A relationship becomes irresistible only when it continues to unfold, when each moment reveals something new about you, instead of answering every question directly. Letting a quiet smile or a slow pause lead the way keeps him emotionally alert, curious, and engaged. The strongest form of seduction is silent, subtle, intuitive, and emotional rather than loud or demanding. A man's subconscious is not drawn to predictability, but to discovery. When you master this rhythm, you don't just capture his attention, you enter his inner world. And that is where emotional bonding takes root. Jung believed we are far more controlled by the unconscious than we admit, and it is there, below thought and reason, that archetypes shape desire. When a man feels emotionally bound to a woman, it's not logic making the choice, it's instinct recognizing her as essential. What keeps him craving you isn't explanation, but sensation. When everything becomes obvious, he may appreciate you, but the pull begins to fade. When there is depth in you, a quiet mystery he cannot decode, he stays engaged because discovery becomes a journey. The women men never forget are not the loudest, nor the most available, but the ones who reveal themselves slowly. Jung spoke about the shadow, the hidden layers of the psyche, and this matters deeply here. A man doesn't fall in love only with what he sees in you, but with what he discovers in himself through you. When your presence reveals emotions he rarely expresses, dreams he forgot, or vulnerabilities that make him feel more human, he feels safe in a way he never learned to name. Anticipation is one of the strongest triggers of desire. When you are not always available, when there is space between encounters, his imagination fills that space with longing, and longing creates intensity. This isn't manipulation, it is human psychology. A man doesn't become addicted when everything is given. He becomes captivated when there is always more to learn, feel, and uncover. Desire is movement, an inner pull that needs contrast, tension, mystery, curiosity. Jung taught that true connection is symbolic, emotional, and unconscious. A man may forget words or gestures, but he will never forget how a woman once made him feel alive. And when a woman learns how to communicate with her presence, her silence, her confidence, her emotional depth, and her subtle unpredictability, she stops being simply desired and becomes unforgettable, irreplaceable, and profoundly meaningful in a man's inner life. If this video resonates with you, don't forget to show some love. Hit the like button, share it with someone who needs this message, and make sure you subscribe for more powerful insights every week. Your support truly helps this channel grow, and it lets us keep creating meaningful content for you. Stay connected, stay inspired, and join our community by subscribing and turning on notifications.